Yeah, thank you, Kerry, and thanks everyone. As Kerry said, I'm going to touch base a few things about what's going on in the industry and why Vietnam is becoming kind of an attractive location and why Vietnam is going to be next digital powerhouse. And there are some facts and figures just to introduce as a Vietnam perspective. And if you go to the next slide, I mean, typically what we see is in general kind of I would say it's an inflation within the technology side in outsourcing. The main reasons could be like that there's a lot going on between the geopolitical uncertainty issues that we all see and we are experiencing it, thus causing a major issue with most of the companies in terms of their what they call is a contingency risk, which they need to overcome, and also third-party risk and geopolitical risk. At the same time, there are a lot of new technologies coming up. And new technology is not the same way that the way it's been delivered in the past. And the skill is needed. It's not just the technical skills, but also the mindset, the industry flavor, how they're going to apply it. But at the same time, in the past, a lot of things used to be on the rate card perspective. They just used to look at the rate card, how many people, how I'm going to do this, and what I'm going to get it. But now people have started focusing value for the money. And that means they are getting into new operating models. And what is that new operating model means is like not just by giving my rate card of people, but what value you're going to bring in terms of improving the productivity, time to market, efficiencies, innovation, automation. They're looking all the vendors to come up with something different. It was there, but it's changed again. And service costs are rising. And you know, like the great resignation and the high attritions, like everybody that they're going through. And at the same time, and the costs are rising, the same cost they can't pay today. And it's impacting both vendor perspective and also the client perspective. And retaining them is becoming a much more challenging. And a lot of companies are investing how to retain it. And to add to that, there are global threats like cyber threats, unstable political situation, change of regulations. I mean, if you go to any big countries, like a country is one regulation and they have a rules. But if you go to the states and they have a different way of doing things, and the politically, if they change state political things, and things will change. And these things are really causing a lot of challenges for the people which they want looking to explore. Okay, what I'm going to do and how I'm going to overcome these challenges and how I'm going to meet my business needs and who is going to take my cost of ownership. There's a lot of questions that are coming up, and in that aspect, I mean, I'm going to share what I'm going to talk is going to share with my current last 12 months experience that I'm dealing with some bigger organizations and why they are looking at Vietnam as a potential option along with the existing locations where they have services being delivered, whether it could be from India, Eastern Europe, could be from Ukraine, and could be from Philippines or from China, right? So go to the next slide. So why Vietnam is becoming an attractive location for business services. And one main aspect is people are trying to create India +1, China +1, Eastern Europe +1 to de-risk ongoing challenges that said before. And in that aspect, why I should go to Vietnam? If you look at like annually, there are 50,000 IT graduates coming out of from the university from 150 plus. We as an FPT, we have our own university. We also adding almost 10% of that. And stable politics, which is very critical today. I mean, if you look at the global pace index, where if you look at most of the things have been done, could be India, China, and Vietnam is quite strong and quite stable today. And that's quite a good point for people to consider for long-term growth aspects. And a lot of other issues are coming up with minority, ethical, a very sensitive topic. And if you look at Vietnam's perspective, 80% of they don't belong to any of the ethnic groups and the faith. And that's another way they keep that provides the stability among the people that they work with. And more importantly, most of the outsourcing contracts nowadays is linked to the environment, whether it's a company perspective as a country perspective. So in the COP26, Vietnam is the only one country which has agreed and signed up to achieve net zero emission by 2050. And I am part of some of those discussions when they have between the governments. And they're seriously considering to do those things and taking help from various countries like UK perspective or US and Germany and other countries, asking them to get their intelligence and try to support Vietnam to become a net zero emission by 2050. So it's not just by outsourcing, but also every big company have their ESG goals to achieve. And they are asking vendors to do that. That means, and by default, going to Vietnam, these things are embedded into the way they work and they get the results out. And going to the next slide. And it's not just by numbers of why Vietnam, but if you look at what analysts and advisors are saying from the Vietnam perspective, one of the biggest reports that the ATKNA publishes always, and Vietnam is always either been top 5 or top 6. And if you can see the highlights one there, and even the latest one, they changed the way they do the criteria. They brought more from the digital resilience perspective, like looking at the country in terms of the government and the country digital strategy, and how they are getting the digital skills up level, how the legal structure has been put in place, how they are putting in a norms in place for cybersecurity and corporate activity monitoring, and also looking at the startup activity, which is very, very critical to get the skills and mindset that is needed in the today's technology. By looking at that criteria, Vietnam has been on top 5 in terms of the scoring perspective, but somehow not many people have really realized to tap into Vietnamese market. And not only that aspect, and if you look at the next 2, Tanloans and the Service Globalization Index perspective, they're in 9th position. And the skills ranking perspective in Asia Pac, they're also in the top 3 from the Asia perspective, right? So just to give a bit of, not just talking by myself, also to provide some research reports, what they talk about the country perspective. Going to the next slide. And why talent, right? I mean, there's a talent everywhere. There's a good talent everywhere, right? But how it differentiates Vietnam talent perspective. Personally, after working 2 years with my colleagues in Vietnam and delivering various different projects, working with the different customers, touch wood, as of today, we have not heard any issues about the technical side. The reason being, and also the most of the skills, the people that they're working, they're innovative and they're product mindset. And they don't want to keep working on the current technology. They're always look for what is coming up in the next and how do I need to be relevant for tomorrow. That's a key mindset that's needed for today for the digital skills that any organization trying to apply to digitize their businesses and change the business values, right? So in that aspect, they are number 1 in Asian region, and compared to 34 middle class income groups in like Thailand, Indonesia, India, Philippines, and any other countries, which shows there is a talent out there, which shows they can bring a value. They just not stop there. And what the government is trying to do is investing heavily with the universities and private organizations, trying to bring the talent, like data AI, for example. And we as an FPT are also working in that program. We want to become kind of an Asia Pacific biggest data AI hub with the pool, with the skilled people that are available there. And that kind of investments coming both from the government aspect and also the way the private organizations are investing to create this kind of a capacity, because they realized they could create a powerhouse within Vietnam that could support the talent crisis and add value back to the customers as well. So going to the next slide, and just to give a little bit more about the infrastructure aspect. This is a digital readiness report that has been published recently. And according to the report, one of the things to highlight here is they're implementing 5G, the connectivity, the infrastructure that needed, whether people work from home or go to the offices, they have very much good bandwidth, right? And people, especially the younger generation, they're tech savvy, and everything they do, the business is from mobile. And the internet penetration is quite high. Even it is getting into the remote locations. And they are committed, they believe, and implementing 5G, and they link that into the GDP growth as well. And they do believe the education is not just only a school, and they want to achieve online education. And they put various programs to make that work. But there's one of the major investment the government is encouraging is English perspective. So there are a lot of universities have tied up, and the education system has been introduced back in Vietnam. For example, 2 weeks ago, the UK AQA syllabus has been introduced back into Vietnam universities so that they can have the same kind of level of skills that is needed to when they try to face or try to work with the global enterprises that they're going to, and that will support the skill side, right? So the infrastructure perspective, just to give an ad, and there's a good amount of investment going on. It's not like today's or tomorrow. It's a long-term plan, but they will catch up with any other countries that global perspective to catch up to provide to compete as well. And going to the next slide, just to give an aspect, not just IT skills alone. If you look at most of Apple that we use and most of IBM and Microsoft things, everybody is making heavy investments in Vietnam to create their R&D centers, whether to invent a new product, whether to write embedded systems that they can bring something new to the consumers, or whether it could be telecom or consumer products, it doesn't matter. And everybody already believed and realized there's a talent is there and they need to tap in, and not just manufacturing aspect. This is nothing to do with the manufacturing. It's more getting into the tech R&D side, right? So this is just to give you an aspect, okay, there is a talent available there. So quickly going to the next slide, just to add you, me coming from FPT, because FPT is one of the biggest ICT in Vietnam, and globally they have 50,000 employees, but within ICT sector we are nearly 25 to 30,000 employees today. The biggest, there is no next in Vietnam today. And we're not just in IT side, but the way we are created our ecosystem to provide is like education, how we need to scale up education to align to what the demand comes. And we are the third largest telecom company and #1 data center. Because as per the law, if somebody wants to do the business in Vietnam, the global enterprises, and they need to have some partner, a reliable partner who could host the systems to hold the data. And we are #1 online newspaper, and we are #4 a retailer in terms of selling ICT products, and also the #1 pharmacy. So the brand is also very critical in Vietnam to keep the attrition level low, and also expose the people if they want to grow to become a global in nature, the way they try to upskill themselves. So as an FPT, what we do offer to a lot of customers is like how we can help in case if any of you want to penetrate into Vietnamese market. And because you need to know the local laws and local regulations and local partners that could help. And we do help and support some of the organizations. If they want to set up their own captive, it might be difficult in the beginning, but we do offer those services to create a build and operate model. And we did for a few clients, and I'm having active conversations with a few of clients now in the similar lines. And not just an IT side, in case if somebody wants to expand their business into the Vietnam, and we can help that also. For example, we did for Allianz. If they want to enter to the market, we created a JV kind of an approach, and we enabled their operations, and we handed over everything back to them. So these are the things we can bring back if any of you are interested. And just to give go to the next slide, and it's my last slide, to quickly wrap up. It's not recent one. And if you look at some of the clients that we've been working with, and we've been working with clients from last 20 years. And the recent one I talk about quickly, touch base, is value over the cost. This is something in one of the biggest manufacturer based out of US, and not just headquarters in US, but global operations. They build products for entire automotive industry. And they have a very large team, say 1,500 to 6,000 multi-vendor scenario. So they looked at a very cautious decision to consolidate their vendors, but at the same time, and they want to do something different. They didn't look at just a cost as an aspect, but they look at time to market and the quickly scale up and improve, and also change the operating model. When I say change the operating model, it's not like an outsourced vendor relationship. It's more kind of integrated into their existing teams, deliver as a one team, rather than showing a different to have these contracts in place. yes, the contracts are in place, but the operating model, the way we deliver, the way we embed it into their organization, they don't find any difference between having their in-house teams versus the team that they have in Vietnam. So this is one of the good example to articulate the change of outsourcing models and how customers are taking different approaches, different locations, different strategies that they think they can overcome the skill shortages and ongoing geopolitical crisis, and also the raising the wages. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to take any questions now or later.